Hello and welcome to this Chess Heroes video in which I cover some of the best players of all time. And today I'm going to talk about the future of chess. So the new 2024 World Chess Champion Gukesh Damaraju, 18 years old, the youngest ever. And this is the last game that I had from this year of Gukesh versus Magnus Carlsen, who is considered the greatest chess player in the world. He was the world champion and then decided not to defend his title, of course. So let's see what happens here in a game between these two great players. Gukesh is still young. In the database, I saw about maybe 30 games where he played against Magnus. And of course, Magnus won most of those. We'll just have to see what Gukesh does in the future. So let's take a look at this game. We have e4. So, a more aggressive opening move by the young, now world champion. Magnus responds with e5, keeping things even in the center, and then we have knight f3 immediately attacking this pawn, and so knight to c6 defending. So now the game continues with bishop to c4, and we have the Italian game. What will Magnus do in response? Well, he plays the two knights defense, which can lead to more crazy variations, more complications, and let's see how things continue. We have knight developing. Now, a lot of times you don't want to move a piece twice in the opening unless you have a good reason, and here this move attacks the weak f7 pawn, which is only defended by the king at the moment. And at the same time, the knight is protecting this pawn, which is under attack. So the game continues with d5 being played. And if we go back and look at what the computer says, the computer recommends d5 as being best. And that, the other option, this is really the only option. The second best move would be just developing here, but then this f-pawn will be captured here. So d5 blocks the path of the bishop here, so preventing the capture of this pawn. And now we have capture of the d5 pawn. So right away, Gukesh goes ahead in material here. And this is the Italian game, knight attack, normal variation, according to the computer here. And so we have b5 being played, an immediate attack on the bishop, and the bishop just retreats back. And apparently this is the Alvestad variation, dropping this bishop back here. After this pawn move attacking the bishop, that's where the Alvestad variation begins, it looks like. Yes. And the bishop drops back. Maybe an unorthodox move. Let's see if the computer says that's best. No, the computer does say that bishop to f1 is the best move in this position, retreating the bishop all the way back. So that's interesting. Maybe with the idea of fianchettoing in the future and lining up here, especially if this knight decides to capture this pawn. And then you will have an attack all the way up here on the two knights, on the rook. All right, so the game continues with the knight, in fact, capturing in the center there, the best move in the position. And now the bishop decides to go ahead and take the pawn, which is best, pinning this knight to the king. And then we have bishop developing, protecting the knight, of course. And the game continues with the best move being played by Gukesh. d4, attacking in the center here. Now the game continues with a recapture by Magnus, but apparently this is an inaccuracy according to the computer that jumps the game to almost the pawn equivalent of a lead here. So it looks like Magnus maybe should have played bishop to e7 possibly, getting ready to castle. Although, the computer at this point says that capturing the pawn is best. So let's see how things continue. Although now the computer changed its mind and is saying bishop to e7 would have been better, creating a battery and also attacking this knight here. So we have castling by Gukesh. Now his king is safer. The rook can maneuver to this open file, targeting the king. So the game continues with bishop developing by Magnus Carlsen. And computer now saying this is an inaccuracy, that maybe it would have been better to immediately target the knight with a pawn. So we have a knight retreat, and it looks like this is the first actual mistake in the game. Apparently, queen to h5 would have been better, protecting the knight and also adding some pressure to this f-pawn. All right, so after that queen to h5 move, it looks like just g6 would attack the queen, but then the queen would be able to move up here and prevent castling. The recommendation would be queen to d7, and the king has the option to castle queenside now. So back to the mistake. Knight to f3 was played, and castling is best. Magnus finds that, and now we have bishop capturing on c6, an inaccuracy that swings the game back to black's advantage, just a very slight edge for black. All right, so what happens next? And what else does the computer recommend? Apparently rook to e1. So that's what the computer says is best. Just putting the rook on e1, fighting for control of the the completely open e file. So the game continues with capture of that knight, recapture by the bishop, and now we have knight taking the pawn. So Gukesh does go ahead by a pawn here, but the computer says the game is pretty much even at this point. So the knight is attacking the bishop, threatening Magnus's bishop pair. And having that bishop pair is probably one of the reasons that they consider the game is even, especially as Gukesh does not have the bishop pair. So Magnus has this extra light squared bishop to help control the board. So the bishop retreats, making sure Magnus keeps his bishop pair. And now we have another mistake here. So knight to d2 being played. What does the computer recommend? Well, apparently the computer likes knight to f5, jumping here and targeting the bishop, trying to threaten that bishop pair perhaps. So the game continued with this mistake move, and now rook to e8, getting ready for maybe an upcoming battle on this open e file. So, computer says this is a good move, but looks like knight to f4 was preferred, which brings the knight, that would bring the knight closer to the king side for a future attack possibly. The bishop is unleashed attacking here, and then you would have two pieces. You'd have the knight and the bishop both attacking this pawn, and that could possibly provoke some weaknesses here on Gukesh's king side. So in the game, we actually had the, if I go back here, The knight mistake move. The rook fighting for the open file. The pawn presses forward. Another mistake by Gukesh here. Now, keep in mind this is a rapid game, but they still have quite a bit of time on the clock. Magnus still has 24 minutes. His opponent is down to 19. So here we have c3, fortifying this knight, but an attack by Magnus, pushing the pawn to c5, threatening this knight. The computer still likes knight to f4 here, piling up on the g2 pawn. But the knight, instead of retreating, launches forward, attacking the dark squared bishop. The bishop retreats, allowing Magnus to maintain the bishop pair. And now we have the other knight jumping forward here. So the knights are slowly moving forward, although the computer prefers this queen to g4 move, lining up on his opponent's king. So queen to f6, not the knight, attacking the unprotected knight on f5. So knight to g3, the knight retreats, and now we have this h6 move, keeping pieces out of the g5 square, giving the king a little breathing room here on h7 to get off the back rank in the future. But the computer says this is a mistake. Black is still in the lead here, but apparently knight to b6 would have been preferred by the computer, getting out of the line of fire of the queen. What else does this knight to b6 move do? Maybe prepares a repositioning of the knight. The knight could maybe jump forward, keeping an eye on this pawn. So the game continues with queen to c2 here, lining up on this diagonal aimed at the king's side, cutting off the back rank, the king's escape from the back rank in the future here. So an inaccuracy according to the computer. So the computer likes rook to e1 better, fighting for that open e file. The game continues with rook centralizing. Usually a good plan, find the worst placed piece, which was this rook in the corner, not doing much there. Centralize, placing the rook on an open file, helping bolster this knight along with the bishop. And so the game continues with rook lining up here. So now we have knight retreating. Rooks are exchanged. And the best move is found. The knight drops back. And then from here, where is this knight going? Maybe repositioning to here in the future. Let's see what happens. The rook is attacking. And we have a back rank mate threat, but of course that is blocked, defending the threat. Here you develop the bishop, you're attacking this pawn, although it is protected at the moment. But this also unleashes Gukesh's, one of his worst placed piece, probably the worst one that was stuck here in the corner. This knight needs to get off the back rank. So we have knight jumping forward, targeting the bishop on e3. This knight drops back, defending. An interesting picture here with both knights on the back rank. And that's saying the knight on the rim is dim. Could apply here, but as long as your knights are just temporarily there and they're on their way, to greener pastures, I guess. So here we go. We have a exchange of knight for bishop. The recapture by the knight. Pawn pushes forward, gaining space, kind of fixing the queenside pawns. The game continues with the queen developing, targeting this unprotected pawn. And a brilliant move by Magnus Carlsen. And this is why he is the best player in the world, or just one example. he finds the best move here. This rook sacrifice, well, not a sacrifice, but an exchange of rook for knight here. So after this, we have recapture. It weakens the king side a little bit of his opponent. And now we have bishop lining up on the unprotected pawn and the king. So knight is developed a mistake here that jumps the game to almost the equivalent of 2 pawns for black, although materially Gukesh is ahead by +3. So, this is a good experience for the young world champion playing against the best player in the world. He still has, some chess to learn, of course, and who better to get lessons from than Magnus Carlsen. So we have a capture with check. But let me go back real quick. I just want to see what the computer recommended. Instead of this knight move, apparently queen to e8 check would have been best. And with that, the game would be even. The king, of course, would have to... we could take a quick look at that. Queen check, king forced to escape. I guess the bishop could block, but this king move would be better. Then the knight should jump up here. Bishop would capture with check. Oh no, that's a blunder. Excuse me. Wrong bishop. This bishop must capture. After recapture, now queen captures. Rook to e1, defending the pawn. And it looks like f6. But at this point, the game would be dead even, according to the computer. Black would have this pawn majority of 3 versus 2 here on the king side. 3 versus 2 on the queen side. So, and then the imbalance of rook versus bishop here. But the computer says that it is even at this point. All right, so, before I dive too much into what did not happen, let's see what actually happened in the game. So, a mistake move. Bishop captures with check here. King towards the center, but now we have this queen lined up, pinning the knight to the king. Bishop attacks the queen. Queen drops back, and now the game continues with bishop to e4. A great move by Magnus. The bishops are centralized, controlling a lot of territory here on this d file. And so now the queen launches forward onto the 7th rank, targeting this pawn, although it's backed up by the bishop here. So we see how powerful this bishop pair is on an open board, in this open position. So the game continues with king to h7, a move for safety made by Magnus, although apparently the computer liked bishop to d3 check better. And I guess we could take a quick look at that. So bishop to d3 check. The king should move to e1, but at this point, it's almost a winning advantage for black. They recommend queen to b6 here, targeting this pawn. Queen to e8 check, and now the king to h7. So here, b3, bishop. Interesting choice. Bishop to d2 is best. And it looks like he would just give up a bishop there. Let me make sure that's correct. All right, yeah, let's take a look at this. So bishop to d2, king captures, but that allows queen to f2. king to d1, queen to c2 check. Wow, yeah, I mean, Magnus probably sees all this, but you know, the king would just be on the run here. Queen takes c3 with check and forking these pieces. All right. Wow. Okay, back to the game. We had king running to safety here, and we noticed that the bishop here is covering this diagonal. You know, so protecting against any future queen checks on the black king. So the game continues with king coming forward, attacking the unprotected bishop. The bishop drops back to b3, or excuse me, b6. All right, so at this point on the clock, things have changed. Magnus only has 2 minutes on the clock versus 3 for Gukesh. So this is probably why more mistakes and inaccuracies are happening. So bishop to b6, a mistake. The game is now even. Apparently bishop to c5 here would have been a little bit better. So the game continues with rook to e1, a great move by Gukesh. Now the queen protects this bishop, which the rook is lining up on. And so the game continues with king to d1, another great move, a discovered attack on the bishop, but as I said, it is protected for the moment. So now we have queen capturing here, rook captures, queen captures, pieces are exchanged. We're down to 31 seconds for Gukesh, 42 for Magnus, and so rook to e2, and now we have the bishop centralizing here, blocking the scope of the rook. And then the game continues with pawn pushing forward. Queen to the back rank, attacking the king, forcing either a block or the king to run. And we have a rook block. Another check, block. And will we have a draw by repetition of position? Let's find out. Yes. So, and the clock, they both have less than a minute on the clock. You know, and that probably contributed to this draw by repetition. And the fact that Gukesh is up materially by +1. So Magnus holds a draw there behind in material, but he did have a good little attack, against his opponent's king. So a draw there. This was the most recent game I found with Magnus playing Gukesh. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the future of chess will hold. You know, how much will Gukesh improve? You know, he's still a very young 18-year-old world champion, and he has many years to improve and get even better. And I look forward to any future showdowns of Gukesh versus Magnus Carlsen, as Magnus Carlsen is still rated #1 in the world, and Gukesh, I think, is around #5 or so. All right, well, feel free to leave any comments, like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and have a super chess day.